As my fellow directors leave the stage, we're now going to move on to our keynote speakers. It's my great pleasure to introduce JP Rangaswami, who, as it says in your program, is Chief Scientist at Salesforce.com. I think that allows him to fly around the world talking about what he wants to talk about. But he is a force of nature. He's well known as a guru, has been writing, blogging about the web from the very earliest days. And he's been a supporter of Web Science since we started it, and he is now a director of the Web Science Trust. And I learn so much from this man every time I speak to him and hear him talk. He's also an aficionado of cricket and gets tickets for the Oval. So thank you, JP, for that, and thank you for coming this afternoon to talk to us.
Good afternoon. It's an incredible honor and privilege to be here. There are times when having a really big lectern in front of you helps. Right? No knock knees. You won't see me sort of shivering. We live in incredible times. I remember when I was at school, I learnt about this thing called chlorofluorocarbons and their effect on the ozone layer and greenhouse gases and the effects. And we used to talk about damage to the ozone layer, and after a while it became global warming, and after a while it became climate change, whatever the topic du jour to try to describe it. But still, when I was at school, what puzzled me was that somehow the West in the mid-70s had started seeing that there was damage being done with these CFCs. And at the same time as science had managed to get to that point, the institutions that were creating them were quite happy to export the technology to India so that new refrigerators could be built there using that technology. And my immediate reaction was, I have completely got this wrong. Obviously, the ozone layer is sort of geostationary, and it can have its holes anywhere. It shouldn't matter. But this idea that science could get something right and then commerce and politics could implement it in a different way made me think about global problems differently. Because I looked into it deeper and found out that that particular agreement, which led to a set of incredible sort of protocols and signatures from every nation that existed and a few that don't, was the most successful such agreement in scientific history. And they celebrated the 25th anniversary of that agreement recently, and we still haven't really stopped it. And my reaction then and now is, for global problems of that sort, we don't have time. That the way we run things, the paradigm of governance and discussion that we have, of collaboration around information, time is still built in 16th, 17th, 19th century models of it. Now look at the world I live in now and say, all my children friended me on Facebook and are still friends with me on Facebook, but their expectations on privacy were different. My eldest brought me in the first few months of anyone outside a few universities being able to get in, and her reaction was, if you have any questions, come to me and I'll help you. Right? She's 28 now. My son was 22. He said, yeah, sure, I'll friend you, but don't you dare stalk any of the women you see in photographs with me. My daughter, who's 16, spoke to me and said, she's the most recent on Facebook, you can do whatever you like, but if I catch you commenting on one post of mine, I'll unfriend you, okay? So the cultures of how people connect and share are still evolving, and there's a lot to go through with it. I remember when I was in Austin, Texas on holiday in August, because people like me go there when nobody else is there, because I come from Calcutta. I want to go to places where no one's there sometimes. And I woke up at 1:30 one morning with a car alarm going off. I couldn't believe this. I told my wife, because she was waking up, and said, I better call the reception, find out what's going on. And she looked at me strangely. So I realized something was wrong, and I looked closer, and she said, JP, the alarm's coming from you. Okay, I have a pacemaker. And it went off. And I had to figure out which alarm was it. Was it the get thee to hospital straight away? Was it take it easy, you got 6 months to change your battery? Or was it talk to a cardiologist sometime soon? Okay, it was the talk to a cardiologist type. And so I did when he'd woken up. And I said, why did it wake me up at 1:30? He said, because your device doesn't have GPS. It doesn't know you're in Austin. It thought it was 8:30 GMT. Okay, so we may have gone really far ahead with connected everythings, with people sharing everything, etc. But the truth is, we haven't solved anything to do with water or energy. We haven't solved anything to do with climate change. We haven't solved anything to do with so many diseases that weren't point diseases. And the point diseases we've solved seem to be coming back because of our lack of willingness to invest in antibiotics. So, one of the most scary things anyone's ever told me is we could be living at a time where my generation had peak longevity. Okay? And I can't even look at my children the same way if I think that even 1% of that statement could be true. So I start thinking, we've got problems of a whole new set of paradigm for which the tools didn't exist until I understood what people were doing with web science. We may think we've solved a great deal of things, but we can't even find a plane. Okay? We haven't actually got anywhere as yet on many, many things to do with healthcare, with education, with even the internet. People can't figure out the difference between the internet and the web and conflate it regularly. When you start seeing the laws that are being made, headless chickens usually come to mind, but that's probably being kind. Right? We are in situations where we need to see a different form of answer. And there's an incredible amount of emotion running around there rather than evidence. Standing here, the idea of evidence, not emotion, is not like new or strange. We have, when I saw what was happening with the web, and like Nigel, I was late to the web, in the sense it must have been 94 before I even had the ability to have a PC at home, to be able to play with it, because no company would let you do whatever you liked because of security implications. So by the time you really got to play, it was the mid-90s. Even though you could be on the internet in the 80s, web access at home for me was a mid-90s phenomenon. And it didn't take time to go bad. And the problems that we face today in terms of having answers even to the simple questions, and I'm not talking about the big ones of the water, energy, health. It's even the small ones like net neutrality or PRISM or right to be forgotten or anything else. We appear to be indulging in debate very, very quickly, polarized, lots of anger, very little true information or evidence. And the system of dialogue and debate seems to be based around that. We need to be able to take that back and say, the ability to do things, where there's the science of collaborative multidisciplinary research already has an infrastructure built for it. What we've heard today, even in the last 40 minutes, says that people are learning how to use it. So I get delighted every time I walk around the exhibits of what's being studied, saying, whether at one end it's learning our habits, learning our history, learning our heritage, learning the horizons of where we're going. It's people actually taking seriously that having some real data about what is happening is meaningful if we're going to find answers. Until then, we're sort of locked into this Groundhog Day of it doesn't matter what the question is, we will land up with polarization, incumbents unwilling, radicals sort of painted as pinko lefty tree huggers on the other side, and a whole sort of mass in between who are unaware usually of what is going on. And these are the very tools that are going to change that single statement that nearly killed me when I was younger, saying we could be living in an age of peak longevity. I don't want that age to exist. The reason why I'm really excited by web science is the multidisciplinary, multicultural, multi-regional nature of what needs to be studied. And the crowdsource implications of that are not trivial either. The open data implications of that are not trivial either, because even those things have to be, when we hear about big data, I'm sort of saying, people now don't know the difference between, correlation and actual and understanding of what made something happen. People don't understand that the semantic web and thinking about the semantic web had looked at how to clean up data, what linked data actually means, looking at the curation implications. So there is a second set of Groundhog Days where people sort of are into the science du jour without it being a science. We have the ability to change all that. I am delighted that I'm even able partially to support and encourage people who can do something about it that way. That's why I'm glad to be here. Thank you for your time.